Hi there, my name's Rou. I'm the publisher at IK Surf Mag and Tonic magazine. I've been testing water sports equipment now for almost 20 years and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about wetsuits. If you're lucky enough to live somewhere tropical, you probably don't need a wetsuit. But for everyone else, they're an integral piece of equipment that we need to enjoy the water sports that we do. Whether you're surfing, windsurfing, kite surfing, winging, whatever you do in the ocean, you're going to need to wrap up in rubber when the temperature drops in order to keep warm. Originally, wetsuits were designed in California so surfers could stay out for longer. And the idea was by making some neoprene vests, they could trap water between the neoprene vest and the skin, and the body heat would warm up the water and keep them a little bit warmer, and they could stay in the sea for longer. The principle of a wetsuit is very much the same. So the idea is that it's meant to trap water between your skin and the neoprene. And that water then warms up with your body heat, and that is what keeps you warm. Obviously, wetsuit technology has changed a lot. I remember about 20 years ago borrowing my dad's wetsuit, which was from the 80s, and heading out in it in Cornwall, and I walked down the beach and felt like a Michelin man. I couldn't really move. These days, wetsuits are extremely flexible, and that makes a big difference for us when we want to get out on the water, because it means we can enjoy the sports we like doing without feeling restricted. Depending on the temperature of the water, depends on the thickness of the wetsuit. So that's the first thing you need to consider. How cold is it going to be? Here in Pembrokeshire, the water temperature doesn't get that cold in the winter, but the air temperature can get down to like 5 degrees, even sometimes less than that, 2 degrees. And you really need a thick wetsuit for those kind of conditions. However, if you're not blessed with those kind of conditions, you're living in Spain or somewhere like that, then you can get away with a thinner wetsuit. With wetsuits, it's always a compromise. So the thicker the material, the stiffer the suit will become, and the harder it's going to be to move within that suit. So even with the most technologically advanced neoprene, a 6mm wetsuit is going to feel a lot more restricted than a 2 or 3mm wetsuit. So if you live somewhere where you only need a 2 or 3mm wetsuit, thumbs up to you, you're going to enjoy wearing it all the time. However, if you live in Northern Europe like me, you're going to need some seriously good rubber in order to enjoy your sessions this winter. So what goes into making a wetsuit? The first thing is the neoprene. Now this is a rubber material, and basically it's packed with air bubbles, and the more expensive the neoprene, the more air bubbles there are in it. The cheaper it is, the less air bubbles there are in it. The more air bubbles, obviously the more they warm up and the more it retains heat, but also the lighter that wetsuit will become. So if you buy a cheap wetsuit from Tesco's, it's probably not going to keep you very warm because they're using very cheap neoprene. It probably won't fit very well and it's not going to be great. If you're serious about water sports, investing in a good wetsuit is a really good plan. Right now, they're pretty reasonable in price. There's a lot of overstock going on in the industry, so if you want to get a deal, you definitely can. So the neoprene is the first bit of material. Now when you look at a traditional suit like this, it's got a layer on the top of it and a layer on the bottom of it. This is called the jersey on the inside, and it's the outer layer on the top, and these are there to protect the neoprene. Neoprene in its purest form is kind of a smooth skin, so it's very easy to nick with a surfboard fin or with a kiteboard fin or with anything. It's quite easy to cut and it's easy to damage. So wetsuit manufacturers put this layer on top of it to give it a bit of protection. So this is what we call double skin neoprene. Single skin neoprene is not going to hold water, so it won't retain water, so water will just run straight off it. Whereas double skin neoprene like this, water does get on it, so you do have to factor in wind chill when you're wearing a suit like this. However, they're a lot more durable, it's going to last a lot longer, and I'd recommend, unless you're in really, really cold climes or you're diving or something like that, always go for a double skinned wetsuit if you can. Sometimes you'll find panels on the wetsuit have got single skin on, say on the back panel or something like that. That's fine. You're very rarely going to stab yourself in the back, so that's good at keeping the wind chill off, especially if you're surfing, but double skin kind of where it's at. The next thing to think about is the seams of the suit. Now this is how the suit is put together. Now every brand uses different materials and different seams and different stitching techniques, but essentially the main important one is blind stitching, and I'll do a close-up on that. So every suit you buy should be blind stitched, and what that means is they join the two pieces of material together and then they stitch through them, but they don't actually go right the way through the suit. So they're not making a hole in the panel. What they're doing is they're stitching into the neoprene and then up and not going all the way through. Hence the name blind stitched. Now, traditional suits, they just blind stitched them, that was it. And then they developed really good neoprene glues that they could actually glue them together as well. So nowadays most suits will be glued and then blind stitched, and that creates a really strong seam that's durable, and it will also stretch as well. If you look at the close-up that I'll show you, you can see that the blind stitching is kind of looped and it will stretch on that seam. Obviously, if you have a really stretchy neoprene suit and then you use a seam that doesn't stretch, you kind of ruin the purpose of it. So glued and blind stitched, most suits will be that, but then we've got some other bits of technology as well. So on the inside of this suit that I've got here, you can see this blue line. This is what they call a neoprene tape, and this is glued to the inside of the seam, or sometimes the outside of the seam, and that effectively acts as another water entry barrier. So the goal of that tape is to stop water from entering the suit. You can also get liquid seams. I think this suit has got some on here, so I'll show you in a close-up as well. These liquid seams are basically like similar to a tape, but they tend to go on the outside, and it's just a liquid piece of rubber that goes over the glued and blind stitched material, and that again stops water from getting in the suit. So you've got a bunch of choices when it comes to the seams, and obviously the more expensive suits are going to have more taping, more liquid seams, and more technology going into those seams than the cheaper suits. So you do get what you pay for, and having a decent seam on your suit is going to stop water from getting in it. It's going to make you feel warmer, and it's going to stop water from getting out as well. So if water does get in, your body warms it up. What you don't want is flushing. That brings me on to the next thing to talk about of wetsuits. Fit is the most important thing. If you're looking online and just deciding to buy a wetsuit you've never tried on before and you're not really sure on the size, it's a bit of a risk. What you should do is go to your local shop, try on a bunch of suits from a bunch of different brands, because they all fit differently. I happen to be quite lucky. I fit most brands in a large suit. They'll fit me. And these days, in more modern times, because of the stretchiness of the material, because of the advances in the designs of the suits, and because of the advances in the seam technology, most suits have quite a lot of stretch in them. So depending on your body shape, you should be able to find something that fits you, but brands do fit differently. So in this recent test we've had, some of the suits are a little bit bigger on me, some of them are a little bit tighter, so it's worth trying them on. Once you find a brand and a suit that fits you, you can then stick with that brand throughout your career until you want to change, and you can buy that suit off the internet for cheaper prices and things like that. But it's well worth going to your local shop and trying on as many suits as you can, and they'll be really helpful as well. And it's important to have a good fitting suit. If you don't have a good fitting suit, say it's baggy around your body or baggy around your legs, that's going to fill up with water. So you're going to get water sloshing around in the suit, and water's going to make you cold. If the ankles of the suit or the arms of the suit or the neck of the suit is loose, again, water is going to enter, and that's going to chill you down. The idea of a modern wetsuit is it seals water out as much as possible. Any small amount of water that does get in will be warmed up by your body heat and keep you warm, but you then don't want that water flushing in and out of the suit. If you have water coming in and flushing out, you get cold very quickly, because your body temperature is trying to reheat that water constantly, and so you'll get much colder. So the fit of the wetsuit is the most important thing. Next thing to talk about, zips. So you've got various zips placements. They always used to be on the back of the wetsuit, if you remember those. You can still get back zip suits, but nowadays what they tend to do is they tend to go for a straight front zip. And the reason that's more popular is because the zip is shorter, it goes across your chest, and it's not an area where you're stretching. So it's not on your back where you're stretching down or forwards. It's actually just a nice area of your body that you're not really stretching too much. Front zip suits are a little bit harder to get into, but they are better when they're on. Okay, so they'll let less water in, you won't get water going down your back, and I just tend to prefer them. Some people don't. My brother prefers a back zip suit. It doesn't really matter which one you want to go for, but it's worth trying a few on, seeing which styles you like. One thing to say about a front zip suit is it is a little bit harder to get on. What you end up with is a hole in the suit in the middle here, like that. So if you think I've got to get my entire body through that hole, fortunately the material is very stretchy, but it does make it a little bit trickier to get on and off. Zips always go on the back if they're long and vertical, and they go on the front if they're horizontal. So if you're buying a suit and you don't know which way round it goes, a short horizontal zip is a front zip suit, a long vertical zip is a back zip suit. There's a few different technologies with the linings of the suit, so the interior of the wetsuit. So this lining here, You can see it's really furry. It's what they call a thermal lining. The idea is this jersey material traps air against your body, which warms up and makes a nice layer. Any water that gets on it quickly rushes off it and dries off it, so it's a quick drying material as well, which means in between your sessions you can hang your suit up and have the main bit of your suit will be dry again. And then you've got other materials as well, which could be, you know, just a standard straight jersey material on the inside. So have a little look at the technologies. Now, the more money you spend, the more technology you're going to get, the better the suit's going to be at keeping you warm. It really does kind of work like that. However, you can get some pretty decent suits these days for a reasonable price that are still packed with technology, because that technology from the top end, as ever, has trickled down, and it's worth looking into and seeing what you can get. It's always going to be a compromise between warmth, comfort, stretch and money. So those four things are going to be the things that you've got to compromise on. If you haven't got a lot of money, you might find that you lack a suit with the amount of stretch that you might want or the comfort that you might want. But if you've got all the money in the world, you're then down to the compromise of how warm is it versus how stretchy it is. Obviously, the stretchier the material, the thinner that material needs to be to stretch, and therefore it's not going to keep you as warm. If you want to keep something super warm, it's going to be thicker, it's going to be a little bit more restrictive. So just think about what you want from your wetsuit. That is really important. There are loads of different brands on the market, and some of them have some specific feature sets as well. So this wetsuit from Mystic that I'm holding here has got something that we call drain holes, and I'll close up on those in the video. So as kite surfers, this is a really key feature. If you're into kite surfing, you need these on your suit. What happens when we're riding through choppy water on a twin tip, the water will rush up the inside leg of the suit, and what that does, it basically fills your legs up with water. It looks like you've got elephantitis. Any kiteboarder knows the feeling. It's really annoying, and for me it absolutely kills a session. So these drain holes are there so that water will rush up inside the suit, but it will also drain out. Now, the other thing that happens when water hits up the leg of the suit, it can ruffle it up and push it up your leg. I hate that. It absolutely ruins my session. So you can get some leg straps. A lot of the suits will come with them. This Mystic suit has a loop there, so you can attach your leg strap through that loop, and they will hold the ankle of the suit in place. Now, they're a really specific wind sport feature, I would say, for people that are kite surfing, windsurfing. You don't tend to get them on surf suits. So if you're a windsurfer or a kite surfer, it's worth buying a kite surfing wetsuit because it will have some features that you need. If you're a surfer, wing foiler or a hydrofoiler, it doesn't make so much difference because your legs aren't getting hit by water all the time. You tend to spend more time sitting in the water when you're surfing. And when you're foiling, obviously, you're spending more time above the water. So have a little think about what sport you're doing and what wetsuit is going to suit that. It's well worth buying a suit that is tailored to the sport that you're doing. If you're into surfing, there's going to be a lot more stretch on the shoulders. That's going to be great for paddleboarding as well. If you're into kiting, you're going to want those drain holes on the legs. Otherwise, you're going to walk up the beach looking like the Elephant Man. So to sum up, there is a plethora of choice out there for wetsuits. There are loads and loads and loads of brands, and sometimes that can be daunting. So the first thing you want to think about is what sport are you doing? Then tailor that decision to that sport. If you're a multi-sport user, think about what sport you do most. If you're mostly kite surfing, or if you kite surf at all, those leg drain holes are going to be key. If you're not into kite surfing, you're a surfer, then you're not going to need to worry about that sort of technology. So you want to look towards the more surf brand styled suits. As ever, most important thing, get to a shop and try them on. I cannot express how important that is enough. You need to be trying these suits on. The more you try on, the better you'll find a suit that fits you really well, and the fit is really key. On top of that, it really comes down to how much you want to spend, what sort of technologies you're looking for in the suit, and how warm you want to be on the water. If you kite surf a lot, or you windsurf a lot, or you're in the water a lot over the winter, I would say investing in a really good suit is well worth the money.